I think when people think of TaylorMade Farm, they think of immediately its legacy in thoroughbred racing. I don't think they realize that there's this incredible transformational process happening beyond the gates, not just with the horses, but for men in recovery. I'm just learning a little bit more about stable recovery, which is there and in lives through support and community and the healing power of horses. America's Best Racing just did this incredible multi-part series taking us inside this program, and it truly sheds light on the power of horses and what they can do and the power of this program. I'm so excited, Christian, to catch up with you, the CEO and co-founder. Lindsay, you hosted this multi-part series. I don't know how you got through it without coming apart because it was just so. I was warned initially to make sure that I had tissues nearby. And it started for me from the moment that very old, this program. How did it come about for you? And why was it important for you to start this program?
Well, first, I'm a person in recovery, so I've had my struggles. Spent a large portion of my life destroying my life. So that's how I really ended up where I'm at. I've been a soldier and a coal miner my entire life. I didn't know anything about running a recovery program or anything like that. So I ended up getting sober about 7 years ago here in Lexington. Ended up getting a job with the treatment center that I got sober at. And a few years into that, I met a guy named Frank Taylor. He had a family member that needed some help. And that started a friendship first and foremost. And during that friendship, he came to me one day and he was like, I've got this idea for a school of horsemanship. He's like, do you think that could possibly work if we brought guys out to the farm and taught them how to work with horses? And it was the coolest thing I'd ever heard of, for a chance to give people that are in recovery, early recovery, a real chance at a purposeful job. Most of us are made to get jobs flipping burgers at Wendy's or stamping car parts at a factory for $9 an hour or something like that. And that makes it really, really difficult to stay sober. So I had kind of started a second chance employment initiative at the position I was at, which is how this came about. And then once we had started that, um, I started dreaming about creating a housing program for it, and that's what happened. So in June of 2022, I borrowed $15,000 from Frank to open up our first house, hoping that maybe 5, 6, 7 guys would want to participate. And here we are, not even 3 years later, and we've got 4 houses, and we take care of 50 guys every single day. So it's been an incredible journey over the past 2.5 years.
How do the guys go about getting into the program?
Well, that happens several different ways. Obviously, our website is where a lot of people land. I have relationships with most of the treatment centers in the state, lots of the jails here in the state, the Department of Corrections, the Department of Public Advocacy, stuff like that. So they find us, and that doesn't mean that you get into stable recovery. We're pretty particular about who participates in this program. Speaking about the video, we talk about the gift of desperation in there, and that's something that a man needs to be able to commit to a year-long program that has the structure and discipline that we have to find success in sobriety. So it starts with them contacting us, and then we'll go through kind of an interview process and a vetting process. And then if you have shown the willingness and desperation to want to change your life, then you get a chance to come out and show that, prove that.
And many of them, obviously, they've never been around horses or a farm before. What is that first couple of days like for them when they realize this is my path? This is how I'm going to get to the other side.
That's uh that's probably the coolest part of my job, is when a guy gets to our program, he's probably as broken as he's ever been in his life. Many of our guys show up with nothing more than the clothes on their back. Some of them after long-term prison sentences, homelessness, all sorts of different reasons they end up at our place. And within days of being in a barn and around a horse, this guy that was absolutely broken is laughing and smiling and communicating with others. It's magical, and I don't use that word lightly. It is something I've never seen before. And it absolutely, it puts people back together very quickly.
We hear so much about the healing power of horses, and I believe that because I've seen people in recovery go through programs similar. And I've had family members that have been around horses that they're like, they know. And I'm like, how do they know? They know. And there's something in the training process. There's something that just, they feel seen and they feel understood. And Lindsay, I'm curious for you. You've covered some of the biggest sporting events in the world. Why was it important for you to tell this story and to really handle, I mean, a part where you're asking people to bear all and share their story? How did it here?
Well, it was, I mean, listening to Christian talk too, I will tell you, like, there has not been a day since I left that farm that I haven't thought about this. Like, like, and Claudia, it's like you have it stories or things that you cover, and it's like there are very few that you're like, this is actually life changing. And I really truly felt that way. And a big part of the reason I feel that way is because of Christian, because it became so clear that the horses, but also him being the leader of that group. I mean, like it's like you hear stories and you read about what the process is like. You understand maybe what you think AA or recovery programs are like. But to be inside of that room and hear each of the men raise their hands and with such willingness to talk and share their story, like to be a fly on the wall for that, like it literally gives me goosebumps now because the things they were sharing, I don't know that I've ever been across from people that were sharing their gift of desperation, like the depths of despair that they went through and then have come through on the other side. And so hearing them share some of the examples of what their life was like when they hit rock bottom, even some of the things when Christian would ask questions to the group, like, what was your lowest low? And having all these men raise their hands and women, but also having them say some of these examples, those are things that have stuck with me that I think about a lot because I'm like, I cannot believe that this person shared that. And it's so noble what they're doing. But how I got to this point with this is that I had actually met Frank Taylor briefly, and I believe this was last year at the Kentucky Derby. I was talking to Terry Finley and with West Point Thoroughbreds, and Terry brought up what they were doing, and so I had an awareness of stable recovery a bit, or of the School of Horsemanship at least. And then within the work that I've done with ABR, at some point this had come up, and I had said immediately, like, if we're doing that story, if you guys are doing it, please, like, let me be a part of it. And I just really, from the beginning, from hearing what it was about, I thought this was amazing. I also really think that I love horse racing, as you know. I love horses. I believe what you said, like the power of horses to heal. And I think that more of mainstream America should care about the sport also, right? So I'm always kind of thinking about, like, if I'm in this playground, which is this community of horse racing, what are the things that people should know about that they should really care about? What should they be aware of? But this was something, aside from that, that involved horses that I was like, this is incredible. But when I got there, we had an idea of like what we were trying to shoot. But it blew me away. And when we sat down to start interviewing the men that they had helped us pick to talk to, it was like I knew that we were going to hear their stories, but I really did not fully like take the time to sit and think about, like, because I didn't know what their stories were. So what really hit me, like the thing that pushed me over the edge, was like after we did, maybe it was two, and they were really powerful and really moving, and I was instantly like, I want to hear more. There was Kyle, one of the men we talked to, who was one of the stories that we were featuring. He shared that he was a star on his football team and that he had an injury, and that's how he got hooked. And I was just like, I don't know. So there was every different type of story, and it painted a whole picture for me. And I also lost my cousin to addiction. And so at a certain point, I'm talking to guys and I'm like, this could have been him. Oh, if we could have gotten him in a place like this. And it became so clear that the difference is the purpose, like the purpose that they're given after, and someone shepherding them through that purpose, which is Christian. And we watching the men as they cook dinner together and that part of the life, and like how, their day to day is. There were men, and several of them said, I have been through 7 rehab facilities, 7 programs. And what people don't know is that you're basically put back on the streets, and you have to have something like this. And so, yeah. That very long answer to your very short question. I can go on and
I
on.
mean, I'm curious, Lindsay, what is it that you think is so healing about horses? Have you like, I know you have because I've seen whenever you put stories, even on Instagram, what do you feel that they understand that maybe other people, like a counselor, would not? What happens when you're in that moment around a horse? And what did they explain to you is begins the change inside?
I mean, I think it's, and I'm sure Christian could share this too. Like, I think it's someone down there when we were interviewing, I can't remember who said it, but they were describing just part of it is the trust. And it's a mutual thing at Stable Recovery because these men who have never been around horses have to get really comfortable really fast with trusting that they can walk in the stall, the door's going to be closed behind them, and they can just figure it out and trust this animal. Therefore, on the flip side, the horse has to learn that they can trust this individual who is also approaching and being around it, right? So it's sort of the magic that occurs, I think, for them a little bit in that kind of moment. But I think it's these men over and over, they were saying it's like they just felt peace. Peace is the word that they kept describing. And so being in the presence of the horse and understanding that moment where you feel like a horse, is trying to communicate with you or understands what you're feeling or makes a simple movement where it's just like a connection. And I think it's when you think about what you hear so much from trainers, from owners, but especially trainers who will say, like, you have to let the horse tell you. The horse will give you every bit of information you need, and I think it's not that different. But I do think it was so cool the way that, none of them had been around them. And then watching certain men in the program doing their work at the School of Horsemanship, the men who were on the front end of their recovery journey, and seeing them like working together, grooming and doing the things. And I'm like, my gosh, like I haven't done that with a horse. Like I haven't, right? But it was so cool to watch them just really have that connection and you could really see it. So excuse me, and the way that they want to go beyond and like stay and work. And many of them realize that they want to have jobs down the road if they can. I mean, that's just really powerful stuff.
Lindsay said a key thing for me that I've heard a lot in these programs: trust. It's almost like, kind of describe what you feel. It's almost like a tug of war of trust of which way is this going to go, right? How are we going to get through this? How are we going to work this out?
Sure. Uh, I talk about that a lot, and through circumstances and reasons, these guys, most of these guys have lost the ability to be trusted and to trust on both sides of it. So, like Lindsay described, asking a man who's never been around 1,000-pound animal before to step into a small stall and close the door behind him, and he's being told it's going to be okay as long as you're okay. Just trusting these guys with responsibility first and foremost. That one of the guys, and it was part 2, I think, of the ABR series. His name is Josh Franks. He was one of the first guys I had come through the program. His experience was he did a long term in prison for methamphetamines, had never been trusted by anyone his entire life, including his family. And he talks about how after several weeks in the barn, he's got veterinarians coming up and asking him questions about the horse and how that meant so much to him for a doctor to ask his opinion about a specific horse. And he was like, that I felt like a person again. I felt like, I was reliable. People depended on me, and these are things you lose all of that during addiction. People do not rely on you. They can't trust you. And for, in the eyes of a guy that's only a few weeks into sobriety, for a doctor to come up and ask his opinion about something that means a lot. And so when Frank kind of talked about the idea behind the School of Horsemanship, we came up kind of with the philosophy of our program, which is ambitious sobriety, purposeful work. And in my opinion, it's the purpose of the work, the purpose behind the horse, that makes a huge difference. And why our success is so high here at Stable Recovery is these guys, they feel good about what they're doing. And I talked about it in that video. I talk about it often. For a lot of people, addiction becomes a self-esteem problem. It takes you into some pretty dark places and you lose every bit of self-esteem that you ever had. Even if you had built some up, you're going to lose that when you're doing what you do in addictions, rebuilding that. And so these guys, when they look in the mirror, they're starting to like what they see for the first time in a very long time. And that makes my job so much easier, as far as trying to support and continue to push these guys. And that's what we do. We push these guys hard. We want them to be their best. We don't settle for anything less than that. And a lot of times, you know, these guys have never done that before. They've done just enough their entire life, just enough to get another hit, just enough to get another drink, just enough to get a job that will allow him to get another hit or another drink. We don't want you to do just enough here. I don't care if you're cleaning a toilet or grooming a horse, do your best. And we demand that of these guys. And because we demand that on a daily basis, within weeks, these guys are already feeling better because they're accomplishing things that they had never accomplished before in their life. So it's a journey though, there's ups and downs throughout the entire process. So we watch that very, very closely. And when we see guys start to go back down, we're there to kind of pick them up. And what's great about our program is the brotherhood and sisterhood. We do have a few females. They don't live with us, obviously, but these guys watch out for one another. They care enough about each other to help each other get through the program. And that's what I tell a guy pretty quick when I meet them is don't get yourself through this program. Get the man next to you through the program. And through that, these guys learn to build some pretty strong bonds, and then they end up at a place like WinStar working together. And so these are lifelong friendships, good positive friendships. Lots of these guys might have had friends before, but they've never had positive friends, that want the best for you. I was that way. I had friends, but they weren't, all they cared about was, what I could provide for them and stuff like that. We're not looking for that here. We want guys that want the best for each other. And if this guy's pushing this guy to be better and that guy pushes the next guy to be better, we all end up being better at the end of the day. And so that's what we're trying to do.
You mentioned the success rates, and that really struck me. I'm thinking for a program that's just been around since 2022, explain the rates that you're seeing of success and how are you making sure they have support once they go on to that next job?
That's the thing is we're a year-long program, and the School of Horsemanship is just the very beginning. That's 90 days. In that first 90 days, we basically hold your hand and tell you where to be and when to get up and when to go to bed and all of that. Those next 9 months are the critical part of it. And that's where I think lots of other programs that end at 90 days or end at 6 months, that's where they fall short, is because, like Lindsay said in the very beginning, when you're done, you're done. And there's no more support. There's no more guidance, anything like that, where for at least a minimum of 1 year, we're going to be there to help in any way that we can. And one thing that was really important for me when I was writing the program for stable recovery is there's no limit as to how long you need to stay here. We don't put, you know, 1 year, you're good. See you later. Go figure it out. Lots of these guys have wreckage from their past that they cannot get cleaned up in a year. Restitution, child support, court cases, driver's licenses. There's lots of different reasons. So how in good conscience could I ask a guy to leave this program after a year and he's not going to be able to get his driver's license for another year? And that's going to make his life very, very difficult. We try to support these guys for as long as they need supported, and that becomes kind of organic. These guys, they know when they're ready to go once they've accomplished that year. And so we've had some guys that have stayed much longer than the year, and then we've had guys that stay just around that year mark. So it again, it's kind of an organic thing, and they know when they're ready. So that helps a lot with success.
See, I was really struck by just whenever people would talk about family, right? I lose it when I know these are dads, and what was your reaction? I'm not going to cry, you guys, my goodness, because I just think I'm a mom, and
Yeah.
I think, oh my gosh, the sense of pride that they felt when they're back with their families. And I'm sorry, you all, that's so important to me as a mom. And I'm thinking I felt so much pride for them. And I'm curious how you felt too.
Yeah. I mean, I get, Edward's story. Edward is the one who ended up getting the offer to go to WinStar. Christian, is that? Yes. Mm, for him, he was, yeah, that it was, I mean, literally, I was like, okay, there were several times in the interview process with each of these people where it was like we all needed to take a moment after we were done with the interview because it was just so real, and it's like, and I really do think that everyone involved with that shoot on our side was like, we felt just really like moved and honestly grateful and lucky to like be in that space and to be able to understand what's happening because yes, like to hear Edward talk about, and he was showing me pictures on his phone of his kids, and how the struggle has been
Yeah.
that he and his wife were, he hadn't seen them, like he can't be around them.
Yeah.
And so that's one of the first things he said after he got the call about the job opportunity was like, I just want to make them proud. I just want, and it's what Christian's saying. I want them to know that they can trust me, but he wants to so much get back to them. He's also the same person that admitted, in the interview that he has dark days all the time where he still considers sometimes he has to, get to the right space of not wanting to, fall back into things. So it was like really, really real. And I think one thing that became really clear to me was just it made me want to, I don't know, like it made me want to be on the other side and just be like, oh my gosh, families, like if you could see what they're doing, or like if you could see how well they're doing or what they're saying. I mean, there was one man who, Gus, who I just was like, he was describing a situation and he was talking about his sister, but he can't talk to his sister because they don't have communication. And I'm just like, what would their relatives at the moment say if they're at the point where they still can't contact them because of where they are in their recovery journey, So it really gave a lens on that for me to be like, man, like there are so many families out there in the world who deal with addiction. And this is where I started really thinking my cousin and his parents. And my cousin, we lost him 2 years ago to an overdose. And when I think about how many times my aunt and uncle knew that he was coming out of that rehab facility in downtown Pittsburgh, that he was going to a halfway house. And I didn't necessarily know until I was asking some of the guys there at Stable Recovery, and they were describing, well, what happened at the halfway houses they had been to and where they didn't work. And I was just like, my God, it's like there's so many people in this world who deal with that, and so many families that really probably don't understand that piece of it. And not to say that they could all fix it, that there's no, but I think having the light, like the lens to understand that there are specific things that you can at least try to make sure that you're trying to get help with when it comes to a family member. It was kind of rambly. Yeah. So it was incredibly touching and very hard to hear. And especially the Kyle, who I referenced, who was the football player. I mean, he was homeless in his hometown. So he was homeless in the town where his family owns a restaurant that is one of the most popular restaurants. So think about that, you
Everybody
know,
knows your business, right? And I
right.
mean, that goes back to self-esteem
And what,
that
to what point?
everybody knows your business. And it's like,
Right.
well, I am those things they may be thinking about me.
And when you're a family who's looking at the addict in your family, what is that? What lengths must you have to go to be like, I love you so much, but I'm cutting you off, and we know that this is your circumstance. So I had so many things swirling around my head in terms of that too, just because of how real and raw these men, were sharing their stories. So I also think that is a really eye-opening special part. That's why it became, to be honest with you, Claudia, like you understand when you shoot so much stuff and then you've got to edit things together. And there was so much content that we had been lucky enough to get. It became like, how do you tell this story? There are a million ways to tell this story to really hone in on. But that's finally where the idea I think came from to like, okay, let's tell a bigger glimpse. But then I really felt like when they were describing the individual stories, like we need to highlight these individual people that we've been talking to, because hearing their stories is what I think really people can relate to in some certain aspect. I don't know. I don't know. Christian, we should have consulted you on that part. Maybe we did. I was like, I don't
No,
know. I mean, this is like such a mind, hard
you
topic.
guys did amazing, and I can't say enough. And I reached out and thanked all, like you all did such a good job of capturing, and I told you all, I think in some of the meetings prior to that, you guys are going to get some incredible stuff, and it's going to be really difficult for you all to decide what to, you could have sat across from anybody in our program, and their story is probably going to be heartwarming, in some way, or tragic in some way, and so That's the thing. And so we're trying to rebuild people here. And with that, if you can rebuild the person, you can hopefully rebuild the family. And then you can kind of rebuild the community. And that, that it's a very, very difficult thing what we face. Addiction in the United States only gets worse. It has not gotten better in quite some time. I do feel, obviously I'm partial, but I think our model and the way we're doing things is works. And I think it, I hope it is replicated in other ways one of these days, because, this is not getting any better, especially and Claudia, you being in Louisville, that's a hard hit area there. Kentucky, West Virginia, Ohio, you would be hard pressed to talk to anybody that has not been touched in some way, shape, form, or fashion by either alcoholism or addiction, whether it be, Lindsay, in your case, where you lost a loved one, or, you've got a loved one that's incarcerated, or you've got a loved one that's in the mental hospital, or you've got a loved one, that's homeless. Unfortunately, this is an uphill battle. And, I I cannot express how grateful I am for the horse industry and what they have done for this program, just like ABR, the TDN, all of these organizations that have, there's a stigma attached to recovery and addiction. There just is. It's not something, it's kind of the big pink elephant in the room. People don't really want to talk about it, but ever since we started Stable Recovery, of course, we have the help of Frank Taylor, who is well known and all of that, but I am blown away at how much support from all sorts of different people that just want to see folks get better. And they've never met this person before, but they're willing to help us out in some way, shape, form, or fashion to see somebody get better. And it's, the horse industry kind of had a black eye in some areas. There were some things being written, and, there was the CBS special where, it showed the dark side of racing and all of that. That is not a true story. This industry has some of the most compassionate, caring people I've ever met in my life. And I didn't know anything about the horse industry, but I am blown away at how many good people surround this industry. And again, Claudia, it's the horse. They're exposed to this incredible animal that almost, demands them to do good. And I don't know why or how. Again, I'll use that word magic. I don't know what it is, but
Yeah.
something about being around a horse, it just makes people better. And that, I'm not just saying that. I see it every single day.
You mentioned your model works, that it's different. How is it, what is the secret sauce you think that makes it successful and different from maybe other programs that are out there like it?
So I'll be careful so I don't say anything I'm
And
not
I'd like
supposed
to
to
weigh
say.
in on this after
And
he
they're
does, because
all,
I've got some
they're
thoughts.
all
But
super
I
special in their own ways. But what do you think that you put in there that you're like, I
so
think this is really the glue that's turning this into success?
so besides the horse, which is an unfair advantage that we have, it's attention to the individual and what each man or woman needs to make it one more day. I tell folks all the time, the ones that are having a really bad day, just make it to the pillow. Just make it to the pillow tonight and you get a chance at tomorrow, right? And that is really, really important. It was the way Stable Recovery came about were my many failures. That's how it came about. I took everything I had failed at in sober living or treatment or jail or whatever it was. And I thought, whoa, that doesn't work. Let's do it this way. So giving each person the attention they deserve, that's so important. The problem, and I'll be very careful with treatment right now, is they kind of throw a blanket approach to it, and they throw a bunch of people in a group. And for some of those people in a group, it's going to be good for them. But for the majority, it may not be very good for them. And the unfortunate fact of the matter is recovery has become a business. People, instead of paying particular attention to the individual, they put a dollar sign over that individual. And that person means this much money for this organization. So they don't really care whether that person gets better. All they care about is how much money they can make off that person. And that's, in my opinion, is what's wrong with treatment right now. It's become a booming business. And so we're a therapeutic community. It's different from a lot of other models now. It's peer driven. I don't want it to be staff driven. I want the guys and the girls to have a say in what is done here. And they do. Every single week we sit down and they talk about what they're doing right, what they're doing wrong, and what they may need to do better. You give them a voice in their own recovery. Instead of telling them how to recover, you ask them, what do you need to recover? You know, I don't think that's done enough today. And so, you know, it takes very little for someone early in recovery to make a mistake. And when we make mistakes, some really bad things are going to happen. Overdose, incarceration, homelessness, all sorts of stuff. So when we start to recognize this person might be headed towards a bad choice, we it's like a SWAT team. We're in there and we're gonna sit them down and we're gonna talk about why and how and what and everything that to try to help, because the thing that we're doing, this is deadly. This is a deadly thing that we're dealing with. So it should not be taken lightly. And I just don't think that, you can't take a blanket approach to this. It's got to be something where you can take the time. It is the worst business model. I have the worst business model in the history of businesses. But that again, the
It's
support
working.
from the horse
Something's
industry,
working.
Well, and
it
Frank,
is. It is, but
but
it's
Frank
man,
Taylor found Christian, right? You were running the restaurant, correct? Am I
I was actually at a different treatment center running a different treatment center.
sorry. Yes, but
Yeah.
you were running. So sorry, I'm not trying to fill in the gaps, but
No, you're
He
Frank
fine.
saw
knew
something in you.
Frank knew what he was doing where he was prior and was like that I want that. I want him, right? Like, and that, because that's what Frank shared with us.
Wow. Did that Christian feel like a meant to be moment? That like
Uh,
something's coming together, that paths align,
so
God is paving a path. Did you feel that?
there has been divine intervention in this entire thing, and people know this. 7 years ago, a little over 7 years ago, I was living in a homeless camp in Owensboro, Kentucky, completely lost. And, some things that happened in my life to where I was able to place myself in position to meet Frank. And then, obviously with his support, but Frank is one of the most generous, kindest he was doing this sort of thing long before stable recovery. Frank is known for taking in the homeless guy and letting him stay in the basement. And again, there's some incredible people in this industry, but Frank and I, we instantly hit it off. We're quite the opposite. I'm a very disciplined, stern, you do it by the book all the time. Frank is a little more loose with things, but we just kind of mesh together. And tell you something about Frank. He comes in and he sits down in the middle of these guys and he treats them just like anybody else. And then later that day, they'll see Frank on TV and be like, that's the guy that was just talking to me like a person. So it's been incredible. And then we've got other people around the industry from some very large organizations that also play a big part in this. It is not anything that I do. I have tons of help. Our staff is incredible.
Lindsay's gonna beg to differ pretty soon. Watch out. She's gonna jump in.
I've had a lot of help with this. And God, you said it, Claudia,
Mhm.
without that, this has been one of those things that we really had no idea what we were doing. I had an idea about how to run recovery housing, and Frank had an idea about what he wanted the school to look like. We didn't know that any of these strategic partners would step in and want to start hiring our guys. Windstar, Coolmore, Godolphin, Brookledge, Root and Riddle. These are the biggest names in the industry, and they trust us. And so it's so much fun. There's a special on Netflix right now about horse racing, and I watched a few of the episodes last night, and we had our gala last Saturday, and just about everybody in that Netflix special was up at our gala, just as and it was just incredible. The amount of support we've had is incredible. And we just, I get to wake up every single day and try to help somebody fight the demons that I fight. And it's the greatest job in the world. Like, it literally is the greatest job in the world. I am so blessed to be able to do this, which makes it really, really easy to work hard at it.
I was just going to add that it's kind of what Christian just said is like he's been there before, and more than one of the men that we talked to reiterated the importance of that. And so the fact that they're very well aware that he has walked in their shoes to some extent means something, but also so seeing that they know that they have boundaries also with you, Christian, which is so powerful and awesome to see, because I saw him get fiery when they weren't cleaning up or whatever it was, like they know. And I think,
This is not like a country club, you
right,
don't like to be like that. Like the mood is not,
they know
we're here on vacation and we're just hanging out at a horse farm. It's not like that.
totally not at all. But to his point, the brotherhood that has been created there is really palpable. You can feel it. I think, what I sensed was it's like they were very, when we were asking questions about scheduling, I'm like, okay, we'll see you guys in a few hours here. Here's where we're meeting you. And they were all telling us, like, well, this is his Monday. What do you call it? Your Monday motivation, Christian. And they were like all so excited to come and see that. And they were like, oh, wait until you see this. And it's, Christian standing up and delivering his message. And when we were there, he talked about the gift of desperation. And it was just incredible. And I think, and that was where he asked each man, like, raise your hand and remember the moment that you hit rock bottom. And that's where, like I said, I was just so shocked that, like, they're all sharing their things. And some of the stories that they shared about hitting rock bottom were things that I would have never fathomed. And I think so there's no question that I do believe that your blueprint for success is just amazing, because it's like, exactly what they need, like, because you've been there. But I also think it takes a special person who has Christian's background also of the leadership aspect, the stern, boundary setting delivery, but also like the heart that meets them where they are. And they know that they can fail. Like, that's the thing. They know that they can fail. And if they do that, I believe. And it's like there is a safety net that is there to support. And we're not even talking yet about the horses, right? So then it's like that paired with that special connection and bond was really awesome. So I think this would be a very successful blueprint, but I don't think that it's what it is if it's not Christian who's leading it, and Frank, who saw the power of that.
And saw what it could actually become.
Yeah. And then men like Josh, who has gone through the program and is now, I mean, I watched him full of baby. I mean, he's there in the thick of it. We saw it happen, and he's leading the charge, with the vets. And so it's like, then you've got that. So then it's not only that, oh yeah, there is this thing that we can strive for, we can see it. There's someone giving us that example of what we can see. And that, to watch Kyle like lead the men at the School of Horsemanship, that was so cool, because I mean, it was just mind blowing all around. It's awesome. Just awesome.
Do a little, where are they now, Christian?
As far as they're
Your
exactly where they
graduates?
were when all that went on.
Yeah.
These guys are established horsemen now. They're relied upon by the largest consignor of thoroughbreds in the world, and they trust them to come in and run that farm and do a good job. And that's part of the success. Is we've just been very lucky that these partners, TaylorMade first and foremost, have provided the purpose. They haven't just provided jobs; they've provided purpose. And these guys are hired on. One of the training barns at WinStar is completely run by Stable Recovery. The entire barn itself are Stable Recovery guys. And I don't know how much you know about WinStar. I'm sure quite a bit. They're pretty good at what they do.
Yeah.
And for them to trust, a bunch of guys from Stable Recovery to take care of those horses that they're training to maybe win a Kentucky Derby or something like that, and then for the guys, we've got the Derby coming up. And there are a couple of WinStar horses that they've touched, that they've played a part in, that are going to be running, in the Derby, Preakness, Belmont, and beyond. To be able to get everybody together, we've done it a couple of times now, but that Derby day is a big day for us, because a lot of these guys either foaled one of these horses at TaylorMade or groomed one of these horses at WinStar. We've got two guys that are helping train now. Will Walden, who's one of my best friends, has a horse in the Oaks this year called Bless the Broken, fittingly. And Blaine Service is Brad Cox's assistant trainer. And so, these are top level positions in the industry. And that was a really inspiring thing for me when Frank started the School of Horsemanship. Is they didn't care about your background. They didn't judge you on your felonies or something like that. The horse industry, if you show up and work hard, there is room for advancement in this industry, where a lot of these guys, first of all, don't even get the job because of their background. But if they do get the job, they're not going very far, very fast. Josh Franks came to us 2.5 years ago. He is a division manager at TaylorMade Farm, has 200 horses and 15 employees, and this is a guy that the best he could do was go to prison. And now here he is, a success in the industry. So,
And Josh is one that shared that his mother, and he shares this, that his mother didn't know how to be a good mom. And he and his story had expressed how that was part of the upbringing, that just part of his story. His mom passed away when he got to stable recovery. So he said that he believes that God placed him in the place where he was supposed to be when that happened. He also knew that his mother grew up and had a love of horses, right? So, ironically, like that whole connection, I didn't do it justice articulating it, because that was one that had me like almost on the floor in tears, because it was just so, I mean, and also Edward shared that he was on his last leg, had dealt with homelessness, addiction, all of the things that were his gift of desperation. And he literally said, he's like, I literally said a prayer out loud, something like, God, please help me through this. I don't even care if you have to put me on a horse farm. And he was like, literally, that is his. And so he's like, there's no question. I don't know. I just thought that was so powerful and really, really amazing. Divine intervention.
Before we go, I want to get people to where they can learn more about stable recovery, and can people help?
Sure. We always need help.
Yeah.
You can go to our website. It's www.stablerecovery.net, and there's all sorts of different things on there, all the way from volunteers to obviously donations. And when I say donations, look, some of the more expensive things to run a recovery program: toilet paper, paper towels, sheets, blankets, pillows, that sort of stuff. So I think there's an Amazon wish list on there and stuff like that. So all of that stuff really, really helps out. And anybody that's interested in coming out and actually seeing the program in action, we're happy to show them around TaylorMade and show them around Stable Recovery.
Lindsay, you mentioned, is episode 2 out now on
Yeah.
America's Best
Yes,
Racing?
it's out. You can see it on the ABR.
It's powerful.
Yep, on the ABR, social channels on YouTube. I'm going to put it up also on my Instagram, which is at Lindsay CZ. So,
Can you give us a tease of kind of how it differs from the first one? Like, where does it go?
sure. So if the first one is an overview of what stable recovery is, and it was highlighting a group, it touched on several people, but it was focused on one person's journey wrapped in. This one is an episode that is following the story of Josh Franks. So the story of who we just discussed, this is his story, the background of his journey. And I think this is so powerful because understanding a bigger picture of what it is, when you see exactly what one person has gone through, it just really is eye-opening. And especially, like, I'm hopeful that people will be able to understand the difference between each of the men that we're highlighting, because it really is, it could be anyone. It could be anyone's brother, sister, son, daughter, mom. It's really a great storytelling by them, not by us. We just put the cameras on them.
I feel like this is the most appropriate story to put out there ahead of the Kentucky Derby, right? Like, I feel like
Yeah.
it's one thing to, we all get caught up in celebrating, and I do too. The hats, the drinks, the this, the that.
Yeah.
I think we're celebrating this level of success around this horse, around this human being, like in a different way that I feel blessed that you all have brought this story into my life to see, because for me personally, it adjusted my perspective this year, and I didn't realize it needed to be adjusted. Thank you. Really, Lindsay, like you said, I don't know. It moved me. And I hope more people see this and realize how we just continue to support the industry and support these remarkable people going through this program and programs like this.
Thank you, Claudia.
Thank you all
Thank
so
you.
much.
Thank you all. Lindsay, it was good to see you.
You too, Christian. I hope to see you
Thanks,
soon.
Claudia.
Thank you.